Okay, I'd like to introduce Toru Yamamori, who has done an amazing piece of work uncovering a part of the women's movement in the 70s and 80s, which is rarely spoken about, and in fact was something that I didn't know about until he came to interview me about 2 years ago, something like that, because I was involved with a group called Wages for Housework in the 80s, and for some reason even though we were militating for financial independence for women, we somehow didn't connect with this amazing women's movement for basic income. So, Toru, if you want to start.
Thank you for introduction, Barb. 안녕하세요. 감사합니다. Thank you. Basic Income Korean Network for inviting me here. Actually, this is the third time they invited me here. They invited me here 2 occasions in 2010, and I have really fond memory of it. And I'm really glad to meet my Korean comrade, know each other since then, and also meet new Korean friend. My speech today is titled "What can we learn from a grassroots feminist UBI movement? Revisiting Keynes prophecy." From this first part, what can we learn from a grassroots feminist UBI movement? Maybe many of you don't know, but there was a grassroots working class women feminist movement which strongly demanded unconditional basic income in Britain from 1968 to sometime end of 1980s. And I conducted research, and oral historical research for those women for 13 years. But that part, I already presented the paper, previous conference of BIEN held in Montreal. And thanks to Reese her and Michael Howard, who is here, kindly awarded the Best Essay Prize at that conference. So, and this is now on the journal. And so, if some of you are interested in that part of my today's speech, detailed in that paper. But today, I don't want to repeat what I said in Montreal. Rather, what I would like to say is something different. That is, academic historiography of unconditional basic income has tended to focus on what thinkers in the ivory tower wrote. Anyway, I can go with the slide then. The academic historiography of UBI tends to focus on what thinkers in ivory tower wrote. From this type of historiography, but also so too, I believe, we can learn from the history of the basic income movement unfolding outside of the ivory tower. With this in mind, I wish to put forth the need a historiography of basic income movement showing what we can learn from it, with example from the working class women's struggle in 1970s Britain. Let me say a bit more about that movement. Those movements somehow have been erased from written history, and no academic literature recorded these facts either in basic income studies or any other disciplines. So it's erased. But I would say there are 3 important reasons among many why I believe it should not have been excluded from our history. First, this movement finally distinguished an unconditional basic income from the broader concept of guaranteed income long before academics, some of those are here now, long before academics did. Second, there were earnest discussions concerning a feminist argument for unconditional basic income, which academic feminists only started to discuss 2 decades later. Third, the movement succeeded in making a basic income an officially endorsed demand of the whole British women's liberation movement. So I believe there are a number of potential lessons that can be drawn from this movement. Given the time constraint, I will focus on one topic, the recent argument on technological progress and unconditional basic income. So, in Davos in January this year, as the World Economic Forum took place, robots were dancing in the street with the demanded unconditional basic income. Inside the carton box robot, there were activists from the Swiss Initiative for UBI. Jay Wagner, we met, and also Mariola was there till yesterday. The message behind this artistic installation is clear. The inevitability of basic income in the age of technological progress that it replaced human labor with robot labor. This voice in the street echoed a discussion from inside the forum building. A Silicon Valley entrepreneur and Nobel Prize-winning economist expressed their support for basic income at the session entitled "A World Without Work." Dilip George, an AI researcher, and at the same time Silicon Valley AI entrepreneur, explained that UBI is becoming possible. I don't read it because there are already some people explain similar things in other plenary session. Sir Christopher Psardis, a Nobel laureate and a professor at London School of Economics, added that it is not only possible but also necessary. Read, the pie is growing bigger. There is no guarantee that everyone will benefit if we leave the market alone, so we need to develop a new system of redistribution, new policies that will redistribute inevitably from those that market would have rewarded in favor of those that the market would have left behind. Now, a basic income is one of those ways. In fact, it is one I am very much in favor of, as he said. The line of reasoning of basic income in gaining popularity with the artificial intelligence and singularity argument. However, it is not a new argument. For example, some have argued for basic income with similar reasons since the late 1960s. I can name authors like Bordo, Galbraith, Robertson, Doerr, many others. Roughly speaking, these arguments can be charted first, technological progress makes a society wealthier such that an economic problem of poverty gets solved. And second, technological progress significantly reduces the number of jobs. While the first renders UBI possible, the second renders basic income inevitable. The prophecy of the first and second part of this case was categorically given by one of the most influential economists in the last century, John Maynard Keynes. Before uncritically endorsing the case, let us examine Keynes' prophecy and whether it stands. In his essay entitled "Economic Possibility for Our Grandchildren," Keynes introduced the concept of technological unemployment, by which he meant unemployment due to our discovery of means of economizing the use of labor, outrunning the pace at which we can find new uses for labor. It is mainly the accumulation chapter that has caused huge technological progress to take place. The bright side of this technological unemployment is that can end poverty. But it has negative side. The negative side is the age of leisure and of abundance would pose a fearful problem of the ordinary person because We have been trained to long to strive and not to enjoy. Keynes' short-run remedy to this negative side is to work to what work there is still to be done to be as widely shared as possible. Then, people in the 2030s will work for only 3 hours a day. Anyway, so the Keynes also offer a moral solution. Let me go back. Yes, it's for the long run, Keynes envisioned great change in the code of morality. Because we are now free from mobilizing people for the accumulation of capital in order to satisfy our human need, we shall be able to rid ourselves of many of pseudo-moral principles, such as love of money and possession. Let me quote from him. All kinds of social customs and economic practices affecting the distribution of wealth and of economic reward and penalties, which we now maintain at all costs, however distasteful and unjust they may be in themselves, because they are tremendously useful in promoting the accumulation of capital. We shall then be free at last to discard. End quote. With this change of moral code, quote again, we shall honor those who can teach us how to practice our undertake virtuously and well, the delightful people who are capable of taking direct enjoyment in things, the lily of the field who toil not, neither do they spin. End quote. Keynes did not offer us a preset for what a new distribution would look like. If he did not think 3 hours of work could give us a decent wage, he probably assumed some way of distribution other than the one via wage. It might have been a basic income as a result of socialization of capital, as his contemporary economist James Mead advocated. We are nearly Keynes' grandchildren, with some 14 years to go, 2030. Therefore, we are in a good position to evaluate his prophecy. It seems almost correct on economic growth and technological progress. However, it does not appear to be correct as concerns working hours and the change of moral code and of distribution. In 2008, a book came out which 18 leading economists debates question as to why such a talented economist made at least partially wrong prophecy. I shall not repeat their reasoning here. Instead, I'd like to learn from our history of basic income. A past feminist basic income movement will tell us some reasons why Keynes went wrong. Reasons which all of these 18 economists, who happen to be all men, don't even mention. A resolution for basic income was passed with majority vote at the National Women's Liberation Conference held in London, 1977. The resolution was raised by working class women in the Claimant Union movement. The Claimant Union is a union by welfare benefit claimants of welfare benefit claimants for welfare benefit claimants. The first union was formed in Birmingham in 1968. As the news of their struggle and small victories ran across Britain, many other claimant unions were also spontaneously formed. These unions gathered and launched the National Federation Claimant Union in 1970. Members of local unions ranged from 10 to 400. The number of unions is recorded around 90 during the 1970s. Claimant union functioned in the following 3 ways. First, as unions defending their right for social security by collectively negotiating with welfare officers. Secondly, as self-help peer groups empowering people through consciousness raising and many collective activities. Thirdly, as a prefigurative movement which articulated, envisioned new conceptions for good society and reflected these ideas with the way in which they organized collectives. Since the beginning in Birmingham, more than half of members were women, and the majority of long-standing active members were also women as well. Women vis-à-vis men disproportionately faced harassment by welfare officers. These women were suffering from the so-called cohabitation rule, which eventually asks women claimants to be dependent on men or to give up friendship with people of opposite sex. Claimant unions detected institutional sexism behind these practices by welfare officers. There were also transgender claimants, many of whom were considered unemployable by employers, but deemed not entitled to the benefit by welfare officers. Their experience of discrimination led claimants to advocate for the individuality, universality, and unconditionality. That's the UBI now we are discussing here. They had basic income in their four main demands in their charter that adopted in 1970. And insofar as can be traced in my research, they kept it until 1987. While they call it a guaranteed adequate income or guaranteed minimum income, that's the terminology, what they meant by these terms is clearly what we now call UBI. The internal document in 1972 clearly distinguished two different conceptions, which later UBI academics, specifically Philip van Parijs, of Philip and one other, Mr. van der Veen, distinguished a basic income and a make-up guaranteed income. But same distinction is made long before that, and argued that UBI, that claimant demand should be former, that is unconditional basic income. So, these are just summarized, I said. Let me move next section. So, with that feminist perspective we learn from the movement what we can say about Keynes' prophecy. Let me first look at the commonalities between Keynes and women in claimant union and women's liberation movement. Change of the current system of distribution and change of the moral code behind it. For Keynes, this change represents the due course of history in 100 years' time. For the women, the change was to be actualized by the active intervention and demand for basic income. For them, a basic income was an important transitional demand. Its introduction was meant to change both the system and the moral code behind it. Let me move. Whereas major differences between Keynes and these women. First, Keynes took for granted existing waged work to be naturally the same as socially necessary work. In contrast, claimant women did not. Rather, they also tried to redefine the meaning of work. Let me quote from their leaflet. In this society, we are brought up to believe that work and employment are the same things. When people ask you, what do you do? They mean, what is your job? The social status is closely linked to occupational hierarchies. People without employment usually say they don't do anything, whereas, in fact, most people without jobs are busy working hard, bringing up children, caring for sick relatives or neighbors, or simply digging a garden. End quote. They not only included unpaid work in socially necessary work, but they also excluded some waged labor from that socially necessary work. Again, quoting from the same pamphlet, most hardworking people in jobs are supposed to be contributing to the general welfare of society. But in fact, many people are working against the interests of their friends and neighbors. In Britain, for instance, £2,000 million a year is spent on making weapons to kill people with. Other employees act as agents of social control. End quote. So they recognize what is counted as work is socially constructed, unlike Keynes. Second, oh. Okay, where am I? Yes, second. While both of them despised the existing moral code, the new moral code that Keynes emphasized is different from the one that Bremen women prefigured. The former, it is a code that honors leave the field who toil not, neither do they spin. For the latter, it is a code honoring people who work for communities, who work for people who need a care. Third, Bremen women knew what is needed for women's liberation is not just handout money, but autonomy, which Keynes seems to not understand. He wrote, again, quote from Keynes, "We already have a little experience of what I mean, a nervous breakdown of the sort which is already common enough in England and the United States among the wives of the well-to-do classes. Unfortunate women, many of them who are deprived by their wealth of their traditional tasks and occupations, who cannot find it sufficiently amusing when deprived of spur of economic necessities to cook and clean and mend, yet were quite unable to find anything more amusing." End quote. So, according to Keynes' diagnosis, those women suffered because they are free. Prominent women, along with other women in the women's liberation movement, thought those women were not yet free from patriarchal moral code practices that confined them. Finally, they themselves were a living counterexample against the naive hypothesis that technological progress reduced working hours. Many people, including economists, have argued that technological progress in housework reduces women's unpaid working hours at home, making it possible for them to participate in the wage labor market. For example, a Cambridge economist wrote, well, I know Hajun Chan and they're not, I respect him, but let me quote. In terms of consequent economic and social changes, the internet revolution has not been as important as washing machine and other household appliances, which by vastly reducing the amount of work needed for household chores, allowed women to enter the labor market. End quote. Many of those working class women were themselves were counterexamples. Many of them could not afford such new household appliances, but entered the labor market much earlier than middle class women who could afford those appliances. Many women in the movement told me that their participation to wage the labor market was nothing related to technological progress in household appliances. This point is backed by an academic study by a historian of technology. Ruth Schwartz-Cohen wrote more work for mothers. According to her study on the subject in the case of the United States, technological progress in household appliances did not reduce hours of unpaid work conducted by housewives. Why? According to Cohen, first, the technological systems that presently dominated our household were built on the assumption that the full-time housewives would be operating them. Second, there are many rules that tyrannize housewives. Cohen suggests that while those rules are unconscious and therefore potent, by exploring their history, we can bring these rules into consciousness and thereby dilute their potency. We can then decide whether they are truly useful or merely the product of atavism or of an advertiser's hard sell, whether they are agents of oppression or of liberation. End quote. So at least, in the case of domestic unpaid work, technological progress would not automatically reduce working hours. There are other variables we have to consider: social norms, ways new technology is developed, etc. So, what can we say now? As shown in the circle on the slide, we could distinguish 5 types of work. One is work. There's a paid work, unpaid work. In the paid work, there is socially needed one and socially unneeded one. And unpaid work, there is socially needed one and socially unneeded one. And there are some work socially needed, but nobody doesn't do it. So there are 5 categories. How a particular work would fall in which category would be socially determined. Right, I'm talking here, luckily, it's paid by a friend in Korea, but sometimes I attend similar conference by my own, so it's sometimes paid, sometimes unpaid, for example. So, and the amount of work in each category would be surely affected by technological progress, but also would be socially constructed. What kind of technological progress we would have is also socially determined. You know, all genius people in Silicon Valley, Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard are enforced to clean toilet every morning. They will invent something else, right? Certainly, there is something intuitively attractive in the technological progress argument for basic income. And we have a freedom to make that case. But we could make the case more accurately from what we can learn from the grassroots feminist movement for basic income, such that we could fight our struggle in a more constructive way. Thank you.
I think, yeah, it's very interesting how in many ways the women's movement has been about how somehow jobs having a job is supposed to be more liberating than anything else we can do. It's something that the group that I was involved with, Wages for Housework, certainly questioned during the 80s. And in some ways, I think that's why we've been kind of covered up. I'll take any questions or comments from the floor, please?
Yes, I mean, you're making a distinction between a basic income for work and a basic income for existence. And, do you understand?
No.
You're making a distinction between basic income for work and basic income for existence.
No, I didn't.
Well, as I read it, because you describe Keynes as Christ's statement of lilies in the field, but the feminist movement saying that an alternative view is to allocate basic income for socially useful work. So you are recombining the idea of income as basic income alongside work. But why does one need to do that? Why doesn't the existence of a person justify a basic income, whether they are able to work or not, even if it's in industrial work or domestic work or any kind of work?
So sorry, I have to say I didn't say they demanded basic income for work. Both are basic income for just existence. I'm just saying new moral code, their prefigure is different. Keynes one is we should be relaxed, we shouldn't do anything else, and we can enjoy, we just lay down, and we should praise those people. That Keynes said, and in my understanding. And on contrast to that, those Bremen Union women said, no, we should have moral code which could honor those hardworking people who are not paid. But they didn't say, for example, it's a good contrast, wage of housework where Barb belongs in 1980s. 1970s, Barb was there in 1980s, but wage housework started in England in 1972, and they also use the term guaranteed income, but as exactly, your name is Jeffrey? Jeff, yeah. your description is fit into the vision by wage housework, but it might be unfair. But at least my understanding from the interview from Clement Union Women and Selma James herself, those people in the wage housework, at least in 1970s, would like to have wage for housework because it can be a basic income for those kind of unpaid work, and it value those things. But Clement women totally against those kind of policy recommendations. So I don't know where you get wrong.
No, I'm not really sure that. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I didn't see when the hands went up, so I'm going to take Liz, is that right? And then Otto, and then the man down here whose name I can't remember. And then.
Thank you. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on whether anything can be learned from your historical research on how exactly can we move to discarding this pseudo-moral principle, this moral attachment to wage work. I mean, did these women that you look at have a process for getting there?
Do you want to, I don't know, Tori, do you want to take each question as it comes? Or
my memory is very short, so if I allow. It's a good question. As you know, now it's the 1970s, and if you are in Britain and Europe, and almost same in South Korea and Japan, it's really prospects for emancipation is not seen on the way. We can't see any light from our tunnel, but it is very interesting journey. I interviewing those women for 13 years, and it's a kind of collective discussion how we can actualize the ideas, including basic income again in 21st century. And what I can learn from them is, having this kind of big conference is very good, but at the same time, we can do something in the neighborhood. And in the neighborhood, basic income is not good currency to communicate to your neighbors, but there are very various things we can use in the neighborhood for means of communication, and we can think something related to basic income in the communal activity in your neighborhood. And then in deliberative democracy process, we can find some way to get there. Sorry, my answer is very vague, but at least I can say.
Otto Lehto from King's College. My question relates to the question of socially needed work. I think your theoretical division into 5 types of work that you made is very useful and correct, but I was struck by the fact that you divided your pie chart into slightly different sized chunks, and my question relates precisely on how do you define the quantities of these categories, and how do you measure socially needed work? Can you quantize it, and how do you measure what is actually socially needed and what is not?
May I answer?
yeah?
I'm against expert can decide or define those kind of things. It's all depends on the society. Well, at this moment, it depends on society means people who have a voice and power and money can decide. But in my vision is we should reach kind of bottom-up consensus of, for example, what is paid, what is unpaid, and if it's socially needed, we should think about how to reward those kinds of works, for example. And if there are wage work which is socially not needed, well, in Japan now, a lot of many deprived youngsters have to go to, how to say, informal mafia sector and call slightly wealthy older people and how to get their pension from them and call them. Hey mom, I'm your son, I'm in trouble, I'm caught in a train to harass some women, and police said if you give some people $100, then I will be free. Please pay. My friend is collecting the money, and all the poor old mother don't know it's fake, and withdraw her money and put it to them. And those kind of businesses prevailing in Japan. But as far as I understand, many of those youngsters don't want to do such kind of things if there are other means of income. So those kind of wage work which socially not needed can be reduced and we can go for it. And with that kind of a democratic discussion, introduction of basic income can be an option for that.
Okay, yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Guo Jiahao from Taiwan, and I would like to just ask a question. What can we learn from, you just said, grassroots feminist movement? Because I don't actually know much about the female movement, because in Taiwan I think that female and male is actually, in my experience, almost equal. And so what do we actually learn from the grassroots feminist movement earlier? Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
May I ask you the last part again? Sorry, I'm a bit blank. Sorry.
So how do we actually learn from your previous the feminist movement? How do we can actually learn and to apply it to the UBI movement?
Well, that's a good question, but there are not like we can directly apply what we learn some particular movement to some other movement. Well, maybe we could, we could make kind of imitation. But, each movement has their own cause and their own context. And so there are nothing like some people like me detached from any kind of movement that say, oh, this and this and this, well, we can learn this drift and let's apply this to this movement. No, there are not such things. But just wondering, first time I came to this BIEN Congress in 2004, it's in Barcelona. Also, I had a lot of fond memory, and since then, time to time I attend and I read many basic income academic literature. But it's astonishing, around the 1990s there are feminists that discuss whether basic income is good for women or bad for women, but none of them refer or ask really existed women who fought for basic income. That's strange. Well, we don't need to just approve or affirm those women, but at least we should hear their voices. Yeah. And we try to learn from that. That's my point. So.
Man in the back. Yeah.
Thank you, very interesting talk. Two related questions. Did any of these claimant union activists become activists for basic income outside of the claimants union? So did they join other groups? And secondly, were they successful in reform of the welfare system that they faced, reforms that might have moved in an evolutionary way towards a basic income?
Good question again. For basic income activists, as far as I know, for the proper claimant defined as welfare recipient by its own, I don't see none of them as recognize themselves as currently a basic income activists. But yes, some of them get out of those claimant status, and some of them become like a local councillor for Labour Party in Britain, or some join Green Party. And yes, in the Green Party, there is now, well, for last 20 years, they have a basic income in their country for more than 20 years. And Labour, I don't know, current leader and shadow chancellor, how long they will be in charge, but shadow chancellor was is a supporter of basic income, and the leader also mentioned about basic income, and in the broader sense, those councillors belong to the same political party. And why did I say, well, claimant union attracted a lot of volunteers who are not claimant, well, so that they're members, but they support. And one of them is Bill Jordan, who are one of the founder of former Citizen Income Trust in 1985 or something. It wasn't called, it's called Basic Income Research Group or something like that. And also, he's one of the attendants with Barb Philip and the guy standing Otto Anderson in the first meeting of this BIEN Congress. And moving to the second question, as far as I understand, what they mostly achieve good. There are several victories. One is before them, claimant should face the officer by themselves. But now, many places they are allowed to come with other union members or advisors, lawyers, and those people. And also now, I think they can apply online or mail, not necessarily go to the office.
I wouldn't call that a victory of the.
All right.
Yeah. Mind if I say a couple things, because I lived through some of this time in the UK. Thatcher's election in 1979 was a real watershed in terms of all these sorts of demands. It was quite amazing to me to discover many years later that demands for both basic income and the shorter working week were really prevalent in the UK up until like 1979. After that, and with the attacks on both industry and the unions, people became extremely defensive, and so then the whole conversation then switched around to that we have to save our jobs. Okay, so that was a kind of key thing, and a lot of this stuff just kind of dropped off the table for a lot of people. But I would say that, in fact, I don't know whether you can claim this as a victory of the claimants' union women, but certainly the reform of family allowances into an unconditional child benefit was certainly a development in the sort of mid-70s. I think that was brought in. The Child Poverty Action Group claims that victory, but in fact, they probably couldn't have done it without this movement. So I would say that there's that kind of relationship. Is that okay? Okay, sorry, Eduardo, because I'm trying to take people that haven't spoken yet. Yes, Almas, yeah, and then the woman in the back. Okay, I'm going to give another 5 minutes for this discussion. We're kind of running over time, but I think it's an important one. So,
Toru, thank you very much for this very important research and contribution to the history of welfare movements. And I'm wondering if you have, in addition to your work in the UK, looked at welfare rights movements in other countries. Because there was one also in the United States in the 1960s, the National Welfare Rights Organization, that did link up in the late 60s with the movement for a guaranteed minimum income in the US.
Yes, as I distinguished broad term guaranteed income and UBI, if we look at the broader term guaranteed income, it was demand of many feminist movements even wages housework's demand can be sorted out, so broadly defined guaranteed income. And also, wages housework campaign had an international campaign that originated in Italy, and in Italy they also demanded, and in the Italian version is more similar to, more close to unconditional basic income. Not exactly like Clementine women, but very close. And there are branch of their association in the US and Canada, but Barb know more than me.
Up until, yeah, but only, I mean, I have to say with wages for housework, that really was only, it was really only, I would say it was a true international movement only until about 1978. And because of various organizational things, it kind of collapsed. But we can talk about that in private at some point. Okay.
Yeah, and also, yes, the one you mentioned, National Welfare Rights Organization, yes, they endorsed, if my memory is correct, 1967 or 8, and Martin Luther King learned from those women and asked those women to have a campaign together and so go to some conference of those NWRO and kind of teased by those women, like Martin Luther King didn't know exactly those kind of something related to cohabitation rule and those kind of things, and those black women explained to Martin Luther King. And then they supposed to have a campaign together. It's called I forget, a campaign for poor or March of the Poor, I forgot. But just before they collectively started their mobilization, 24th of April of 1967 or 8, just two or 3 weeks before Martin Luther King was assassinated. But NWRO itself, National Welfare Rights Organization itself, kept that demand till the end. And in 1972, Johnny Tillman, which will become secretary of that organization, wrote a great piece in first issue of Ms. magazine, and it's contained, broadly speaking, guaranteeing not exactly unconditional basic income, but guaranteed income. And actually, NWRO visited Clement Union in UK several times in 1970s.
Okay, there was a man at the back. Sorry, what? Yes. Yeah. There's a person at the back. Yeah, blue shirt.
잘 들었습니다. 저 부산에서 온 임언철이라고요. 네. 네, 이번 BNI에 대해서 제가 배운 바는 기본소득이 굳이 경제 한 가지 영역뿐만 아니라 정치, 경제, 사회, 문화 전반적인 부분에서 아주 지대한 긍정적인 효과를 줄 수 있다는 걸 제가 배웠는데요. 교수님께서 말씀하신 부분도 여성운동을 비롯해서 지금까지 보상받지 못한 부분에 있어서도 기본소득은 여러 면에서 긍정적인 효과를 줄 것이라고 말씀하셨습니다. 이반일리치 같은 경우에는 그것을 아주 단순하게 말을 해서 자본주의 사회에서 노동은 임금으로 지급되는 노동과 그렇지 못한 그림자 노동, 섀도우 레이버라고 이렇게 나누었는데요. 그런 부분에 있어서 아까 말씀하신 5 종류의 어떤 그런 일 분류를 떠나서 좀 더 단순화된 지급받는 보수 노동과 그렇지 못한 그림자 노동을 나누어서 어떻게 연구를 좀 더 진행해 보실 생각이 있는지 궁금합니다. 고맙습니다.
Sorry, Drew, did you get any of that? Because I didn't have any of that translated, so my machine isn't working. Toru, did you understand? Because are other people getting the translation? Because I'm not getting it out of my box. Okay, fine.
I don't know. Am I understand correctly? Your question is, it's better not to divide to 5. We stick to dichotomy between paid work and unpaid work. Is that your question?
Sorry, did you? Yeah? Yeah.
Yes, those two is very how to say, simple and powerful, and I'm not denouncing those two categories. I just add more about when we try to socially construct a dimension of meaning or category work in our world, we can have more description, and maybe we can collectively discuss about what should be paid, what should not be paid, or what kind of work no one is yet doing, and how to make us happy to engage those kind of work, which none of us are doing now. So it's not contradictory. I'm just try to supplement those unpaid, paid like distinction.
Right. Okay, I'm going to have to wind it up now. Thank you very much, Toru. That was great. And